Jai Guru, everyone.
Jai Guru.
My name is Priyank. Welcome to minute 7 of the Awake Minute by Minute podcast. Let me introduce you to my friends. Mike, please say hello and tell us, how was your meditation last night?
Hello, I'm Mike. My meditation last night was a bit brief. I was working until like 1 a.m. on uni stuff, so I did what I could, but it was good. I'm glad I did it.
Meditation is meditation, yeah. So I'm Chris. Just to say hi, introduce myself in that sense. My meditation last night was more based on reading. So it was reading part of the lessons, meditating paragraph by paragraph. It's amazing how the time flies when you do that.
My meditation last night was pretty decent. Unfortunately, I tried this new cushion sitting on the floor and it wasn't really working. But you know when you're too far in to like change what you're doing? So I just carried on, and obviously I'm going to change how I do it tonight. Right, minute 7. Let's discuss this. So we have a lovely scene of a river, River Ganges, and we have the narrator, which says over that, which says, unknown to society in general, a great spiritual renaissance started in a remote corner of Benares. Right, so we see quite a lovely picture of or a video of a hovering over the River Ganges amongst the mountains. So who has heard of River Ganges and the significance of it, I suppose? Has anyone been there? Mike?
Yes, I have. Actually, in many different places. I think in this minute they will probably focus on Varanasi, because that's where Lahiri Mahasaya lived. But the River Ganges is quite long. I think it starts somewhere in the Himalayas, and I remember it in Rishikesh, where it's like more like a much smaller river, but really fast, really strong current. Cold water, and there were like people water rafting in it and stuff. So yeah, but it obviously the spiritual significance is huge. Like there's people bathing in it and to purify their lives and their souls and everything. So it has massive significance in the Hindu belief system.
Chris?
Yeah, I have not ever been to India, so it's on my to visit list. So yeah, I haven't seen the Ganges. What I've heard about it though is that it's one of the main rivers in India, isn't it? I think it's over 1,500 miles or 2,500 kilometers. Just when I Google this, I've seen a few documentaries on it. Like my understanding of it is it's kind of like the artery or the lifeline of India. And yeah, just what Mike said about people bathing in it. I've understood over the years there's been a lot of pollution, and there's been a lot of like people trying to say that we should save the rivers in India and keep them sacred and keep them clean. And from an energetic standpoint, water is sacred, right? So we're 70-something% water as human beings. So we really need to keep that element within us clean and sacred, as the body is the temple. So to me, seeing the River Ganges just represents sort of, the key element to what makes us amazing beings in the first place. So I tend to think of the Ganges and tend to think of the rivers through Sadhguru's eyes as well. So he's a big campaigner for it. And yeah, when I hear about the Ganges, that's basically what fires off in my mind, all these things about, water being sacred and the rivers being polluted. India's got a population of 1.3 plus billion people, which is huge. So yeah, that's some of the thoughts that fire off my head.
Yes. In my perspective, I hope to go later this year, but probably won't be able to now because of all this craziness that's happening with the COVID. But yeah, holy water in India, holy water is actually a thing, as Mike alluded to. Purify yourselves and sins and all that. But I've also heard it very heavily misused. For example, at university, my friend would say, "Oh, I'm going to go wild, but don't worry, when I go back to India, I'll just take a dip in the Ganges and all my sins will be absolved." And I was like, that's probably not how it works. But so I've seen it misused as well. But I've also seen it used very well, because obviously it's usually a pilgrimage, and pilgrimages have that purifying effect. A bit of history about the river Ganges. It's so named after the divine mother, or the mother aspect of God, which is Ganga. We call her Ganga Mata. So yeah, she's a goddess, and that's one of the reasons why we consider the river sacred, I suppose. Who's heard of Bhishma? Bhishma from the Mahabharata. So he is the uncle of all the Pandavas, I suppose, and he fights on the Guru's side, but he represents, he talks about this, and God talks with Arjuna. He represents the ego consciousness as opposed to soul consciousness, and so you can read about it. But Bhishma's mother is Ganga, and his other name is Ganga Putra or Gangeya. So that's a bit of trivia. So in terms of holy water, let's talk about holy water for a little while. Actually, like at university, I remember I used to live with a Christian and a Muslim for 2 years, and what we did was, I had some water from the river Ganges. My Muslim friend had some water from Mecca, and I think it's from the Zamzam well. And my Christian friend had a Lord's water from France, which is considered holy as well, and a place of pilgrimage. And then we mixed it all together in one jug, and we'd always, so there was this much, small amount of holy water, and we'd fill the rest of it up with regular water, and would never let it go. So then by the end of the year, even by the end of the year, you'd hope that 1 in a trillion part is still holy in the holy trilogy, holy water that we'd created. Who's got some experience of using holy water? Mike, have you been to Lourdes? You probably have, haven't you?
That's a beautiful story. I like the mixing of the waters. Yeah, I've been to Lourdes. I've been to a few different places that had holy waters. Lourdes is very famous because it's just so big. It's just, it draws crowds from all over Europe, often pilgrims or people who are ill and they're looking for a miraculous healing. And the atmosphere there, it's just so big. It's just, you have like those coaches after coaches after coaches of people coming in, and they're all queuing up there to get a little bit of the water, to get a blessing. And it's also full of merchandise, like Saint Bernadette. It's like the patron saint of Lourdes. I mean, don't quote me on that, but she's a big figure in the story of Lourdes. And so you can buy little Saint Bernadette dolls, and you can buy holy water in all sizes there at ridiculous prices, of course. But
is it from like a river or a well, or how is it there?
Yeah, there's a little spring, so it's actually very beautiful. There's I would say a bit of a cliff, and under that cliff there's a little spring. And I think the way they did it is like there's like multiple fountains where if you queue up, you can go to one of them and fill up your own bottle and take it with you. I didn't do that because you really, like, if you go there in the nice time of year, you will be there with thousands of other people every day. So I went there once at I think it was midnight or something, just when it was closed, obviously, but just to feel the place. And you really feel the contemplation, you feel that devoutness of people there. So it's not a phony place. You feel a very strong devotion in this place. So I would recommend visiting it.
How do you guys store water? At home? Because you know, we've gone into like this craze of bottled water, right? Plastic. Oh, is that copper, a copper vessel?
Yeah, I've got a copper vessel. I've got a copper and a clay vessel.
And why do you store it that way?
Because that's in India, interestingly, that is how we do it. Well, this is in rural India, I suppose. We store water and it's still, and it's like it's retained in this usually a clay pot, and I'm used to having it that way.
Do you know the history of it? Because it is very traditionally Indian, and something that I was fascinated with because yeah, I've heard about balance through Ayurveda and how we should try through managing our intake of food and water and substances to make that pure. And you can go into that probably forever. We could talk about that for many hours, about the balance of that and the pranic energy. But the water element and the storage of the water is very useful, and they have method to the madness in the tradition of storing it in copper, because the copper itself is antibacterial. So not only does it purify that element of it, the idea is, and science hopefully will be revealing this bit by bit, if the molecular structure of the water is, let's say, returned to its more natural state, so that when you drink it, so the H2O compounds in there, when you drink it, it simulates with your body in a more harmonious way. So Sadhguru talks about this a lot, you know, for anybody wanting to look into it, and talks about the way that water can be a poison or a miracle cure healing element. And yeah, when I think about the Ganges, and when I think about this, going back to what I mentioned, like storing the water and keeping it pure, it's really relevant for us just every single day. How do we use water to flush out toxins and things like this? And yeah, it's just a shame that everybody's walking around with these containers of bottle taken from taps, that the water's been probably left in some stale container and pushed through pipes left, right, and center, and it's all very distressed. And there's lots of disharmony coming into our bodies and beings, you know, affecting us at the spiritual level, not being able to shine, let the spirit shine through. So really, if anyone's listening and doesn't know anything about this, it's a fascinating subject, and worthy of a quick bit of research.
How do you store and drink your water, Chris?
So yeah, I invested in copper jug. They're pretty expensive, you know, if you get a decent one, and you know, you've got to leave it overnight. So you would fill it up with from your purest water source that you can find, and leave it overnight. And you could put like a flower in there to enhance the fragrance or the taste of the water. And the essential component is actually to pray to the water, to pray and be grateful, and, you know, give it, imbue it with good positive energy, essentially make it holy. So that's what the monks do. They would pray to the water and make it holy. So in Catholic tradition, go ahead.
What a lovely segue from where we started into where we started with holy water, and we've got into storage and then making it holy ourselves. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Go on, you were saying, Chris. And how do you wash your copper vessel, by the way?
Yeah, that's a trick. So a couple of days ago, my mum poisoned my fiance. So what she did, God bless her, she thought it was fine to do it. She put a slice of lemon into the copper vessel with the water in there, as she would do in, she would have water in glass jugs, and she would put lime into that, and that's okay. But the lime going into the copper vessel reacts with the lime reacts to the acidity reacts to the copper, and actually essentially makes it poisonous, you know, when you drink it. And my fiance, I'm sure she wouldn't mind me saying, she quickly had to run to the bathroom to alleviate herself of the poison that she drank. She was not happy. But I drank some of it, not as much myself, and felt nauseous immediately. So you got to be careful and know how to handle it. But yeah, rule number one is don't put lime in it. But to your question, Priyank, you do use lime to clean it. But you clean it, scrub it, empty everything out, and then put water back in. So don't drink it with it.
Very good. I have nothing to add to this conversation. I just drink water from the tap.
From the tap.
Maybe I should change my ways. Yeah.
You're doing fine, Mike. So you must have pretty good pure water.
Right.
Yeah,
So the next scene. Let's go. So we're floating above the Ganges, and then we see the city, a town, I suppose, with ghats, bathing ghats, and I think cremation grounds. There's definitely some fire there. So not only do people bathe in the Ganges, because this must be the city of Benares or Varanasi. Benares, I believe, is a later name, probably from the British era, but the ancient name is Varanasi, or as Indian would say it, and even older is Kashi, which we can talk about in a second. But yeah, so we get to see that city, and that city Benares is not related to Benares of Spain. Is that how you say it, Mike?
I think so. Yes. Don't quote me.
Your Spanish is pretty good, isn't it?
Oh,
I'd say it's pretty average. No.
Mike's average is like conversational. You could probably read a book.
I can read that, nothing much.
Yeah, so we have this lovely view of this city, this holy city of Kashi. You can tell me something about this city.
I can start a little bit. I have never been there, unfortunately, but like you said, the names, like Guruji mentions it when he goes to. He calls it Benares in the autobiography, but then immediately in the footnote they say that the name was given by the British and its name is now restored to Varanasi. And Guru mentions it as one of the ancient cities of India, and its ancient name was Kashi. And there is, I think the founding story was that it was founded by Shiva. And even in the Mahabharata, Kashi is mentioned once or twice, where the Pandavas they look for Shiva after the war of Kurukshetra, looking for Shiva, and they go to Kashi, actually. So it has been around for a long time, the city. And obviously, like you said, it is famous for being a place of cremation. Cremation is like the standard way to when somebody dies, you cremate someone in India, and the pictures that pop to my mind when I think of Varanasi cremation is they put the body on a boat along with some candles, and they do the whole ritual, and then they burn the body and let it, while it's burning, go out on the water. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that's kind of how I imagine it. I don't know where all those bodies go later on, or I'm sure there's a perfect system that figures it all out, but that's the pictures that pop to my mind.
Yes, Kashi, interesting parallel you drew, all history about Shiva. It has some pretty ancient temples. When I say temples, I don't mean the building itself, because that's been changed, destroyed, invasions, it's all that kind of stuff. But deities and lingas, or energy forms of places of, the inner sanctum of places that were retained. There are many that are they can't even put an age to them. That's pretty impressive. So that's one of the things that if you ever do go there, you have to look up some of the historical temple sites, because ancient, it's obviously very, very unique place. Chris, anything?
Yeah, there's 23,000 plus temples.
Oh wow!
So there's quite a few temples, to say the least. And I think, you know what, I did see a documentary on this years ago, and it was actually on YouTube, like an amateur documentary, and there was a chap going up to the images on some of the temples, and he was showing how there was all sorts of interesting technology being shown there. And I guess the conspiracy was, well, look how advanced everybody was back X number of thousand years ago, and so how there might have been a devolution of humanity since then, maybe from 12,000 years ago or something more. But I just thought, on a side note, that was pretty interesting to me, and maybe that has something to do with the yogas that we talked about in previous minutes. But yeah, I think you guys covered it pretty well. It's one of the
Did that history show, did it cover the Vimanas by any chance?
I think it might have done, yeah.
So Vimanas are described in quite a lot of detail as flying, how the gods would fly from one planet to the other, etc., or in this planet, and it's described, and it's remarkably similar to how a modern day plane or jet engine with wings, etc., are designed. So that's that's quite shocking. We're talking about text and chants that are many thousands of years old. So yeah, it's quite an intriguing prospect.
Yeah, you know what, I looked at it. It's the modern day kind of UFO stuff, to some extent. So it's muddy waters to a degree. But I looked at it and thought, well, that's pretty clearly something of the sorts of what we mentioned, like a flying object. So either it is what it is, or somebody's somehow managed to engrave the shape into the temples, and they pass it off as original. So yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of mysteries for us to figure out about this place. And Benares is Varanasi is one of those kind of handprints of history yet to reveal its mysteries. But it's one of 7 holy cities in India. I'm not going to even try to pronounce the names of all of them. Priyak, I don't know if either of you guys know it, but it's a special place.
Yes. So let's look at the rest of the scene. So now we have various shots. So we have a couple of boys looking at the camera, young boys, and they're like pretending to shoot the camera, and then a cow just inconspicuously walks past the camera and chases the boys down the street. No one cares, as it is a narrow alleyway, I suppose. It's quite a nice scene. And then there's a good maybe 5 to 10 seconds on someone pouring a cup of Indian tea. Indian tea is like it's big steel or stainless steel kettle, and then they usually have glass cups that we have tea in there. So Mike, you're a big fan of tea, aren't you? Indian tea.
I am. Yeah, I mean, I feel like those scenes, they were again supposed to move the viewer from this mountainous river kind of shot. You are still in Babaji's cave, and now we're moving into a city. And so they show the typical scenes of an Indian city, maybe a bit cliche, but also like a cow in a street in India is not something unusual. And I feel like the fact that in India, on every corner you have someone selling you chai. This is just quality of life. I really like chai. It's like when you're in France, you can always get a good croissant or something, or in Italy, you always get a good coffee. And in India, you always get a good chai. I mean, at the right times, I guess. But I like that. That makes me want to go to India, actually, when I see stuff like that.
If you ever meet Mike or go to his place, he will have a whole host and range of herbal teas that he will insist that you have.
Absolutely.
Are they teas, or are they herbal leaf?
Chamomile and all that great stuff. Mike can tell you about his favorite. You like the strawberry one, don't you, Mike? The strawberry.
I have it all. Yeah. Yes.
My mom actually loves her tea so much that my fiance and I actually bought her a sorted, I would say, box, and it has it's like a cabinet. Basically, it's huge, and so there's about 20 different little spots that you put all your tea bags in there. So, yeah. Tea's a big part of everybody's life over here in the UK. Probably thanks to India, right? Because we got the herbal leaves and everything from India.
Yes, that's a whole different story, but yeah.
Can we go down that segue, or is that
No, let's
probably very little spiritual stuff in there? The one thing that I would actually say is going back to the pranic intakes substance through the study of Ayurveda. Who can tell me a little bit about actually the pranic substances, positive, negative, neutral? Do we know much about that as a team?
No, a little bit.
Go on, Priyank.
Even less.
And where does tea fall into the category?
Tea, because of the caffeine, would be tamasic, which is the negative energy, or the not negative. It takes energy from your system or being. So it's negative pranic, we say, and that means that you want to avoid such substances as tea, and there's others such as onion, garlic, and that kind of stuff. Alcohol,
yeah. So I love this. Like, it's the biggest thing in some ways associated with India and the UK, in a sense. Like, what have we imported and taken from India? Well, like the spirituality sense, yes, tea is massive, and it's like negative prana and kind of goes against the other great thing that we take from India, which is the spiritual aspect, of spiritual development and things like this. I just thought the contrast was quite funny.
Let's call it a guilty pleasure.
Guilty pleasure. Yeah. Well, Yogananda loved, I wouldn't say loved, but he had a habit forming when he was drinking coffee. And then he realized one day, I actually am getting kind of hooked. I can't remember the exact words. I think Priyank, you might be able to find it in the book. But he found himself drinking coffee more than what he wanted, and then was able to kick the habit before it truly got hold. And I remember seeing a picture of him holding a cup of coffee and smiling and kind of saying cheers, into the camera frame. And I thought that was a great picture and a very relatable story to my mind, that even somebody like Yogananda can have one or two coffees too many and realize, like, this probably isn't what I want to be doing. But it's nice to know you could probably have a few without hurting yourself too much.
No, I was telling someone off at the center for having coffee because of this conversation that we were just having, and they were like, "No, coffee is my one my one thing that I allow myself to have and do." That person who said that will know who they are. They always come to the center with a massive glass of like Starbucks. So like, it doesn't really like fit in with what we're trying to do.
You're battling uphill, yeah.
Right. So the next scene is we see the footsteps of the beloved brother Vishwananda, and he is in his ochre robes, and he is wearing a lungi and not trousers, which we usually see our lovely monastics wear. So brother Vishwananda, let me just tell you something a bit about him, and then perhaps you can tell me about your experiences with him. He is a monk of the Self-Realization Fellowship Order for more than 40 years. Brother Vishwananda began his monastic life at the Yogavatar Satsang Society of India ashram in Ranchi, the site of Yogananda's original school in India, where he served for 18 years before returning to the United States. He now sits on the board of directors for Self-Realization Fellowship in Yogavatar Satsang Society. So 40 years. So, Mike, what's your experience of Brother Vishwananda?
Talked to him once or twice at open houses at Convocation, and he's and obviously you hear his talks. He's very much in public. He's always one of the stars. When he goes somewhere, he draws crowds. So because he's a very strong spiritual presence. He's very calm always. He's like almost like calm in a, I don't know how to say it, in a strong way. You know when you talk to him, you feel his calmness.
Actively calm and calmly active.
That's right, yeah.
He's the Prince of Peace sitting on a throne of
He
poise.
is exactly that. He's exactly the Prince of Peace.
Wow,
And
we are just saying stuff these are not scripted, guys. This is good.
Yeah. And for anybody who doesn't know what that is, this is material coming from SRF itself. Yeah.
And I feel like it's a little bit in line with how should I say this? Like there is a difference how monks of YSS and monks of SRF interact with devotees. I feel like in SRF they have more of a conversational tone with you and pick you up where you are, I guess, when you live in the West. Whereas in India, I feel like they give it to you more straight and more calmly, and there's less of a I feel like less sugarcoating going on. And I feel like Brother Vishwananda is definitely more of that school. And yeah, he's basically a massive presence when he's there. And it's always very, like when you listen to his talks, it's very devotional, very humble, even though he's such a massive personality. So it's like, most people will have seen him many times and know what I'm talking about.
Chris, have you heard or anything you'd like to share about Brother Vishwananda?
I'm yet to meet. I'm yet to see too much of Brother Vishwananda, but I'm quickly looking for him online, and it looks great. He's got a lot of talks there that I'll delve into, and a lot of material. So
yeah, he's actually just been elected since January 2021. He's now the vice president of the Self-Realization Fellowship. I think he took over from Brother Yogananda, perhaps.
One more humble brag I can throw in there is like when my dad was in India in the 70s. He was at a YSS ashram for a few months, and Brother Vishwananda, I think he was joining the ashram at around that time, and they were there at the same time, and he got to know him back then.
Cool.
Which is pretty cool, yeah. So when they met later on, my dad had this whole story how he met him.
Did Brother Vishwananda say, "I foresee that you're going to have a son? He's going to be a great devotee of Yogananda"?
Yes, of course. Yeah. He will go to the West. Yeah.
Mike is obsessed with settling in US, so that's definitely going to happen.
For sure, one day.
Right. Then we see a scene of a monkey just strolling casually across a balcony. Monkeys are obviously a big feature of India, no matter which part of India you're from. Mike, you've got some monkey stories, I'm sure, from when you were there.
Yeah, my favorite story is we went to Dwarhat Ashram, which is close to Babaji's cave. So you go there, like YSS or SRF devotees, they go there usually to see Babaji's cave because it's not too far from there. And it's an ashram in the hills that's like not really a big city nearby. They're really good, like the lay disciples there, they're really devoted and they're great people, all of them, and they cook really well. They just ask you to bring, like if you want any kind of special vegetables or something to be prepared for you, you bring them yourself. So I'm not sure if it's still like that, but it was like that like 10, 15 years ago when I went. And so we went to a market and we bought like all the good stuff we like. We were like okras and everything. And we brought them like 2-3 shopping bags of vegetables and groceries. And also they said if you want dessert, you can bring some sweet fruits or bananas or something. So that's what we did. We bought like this massive bunch of bananas, was in its own bag. And so we arrived in this like 4x4, and we opened like the big hatch in the back and unload. So they greet us, and there's like one person helping us getting all the groceries in. And the first thing that happens is there's like the car parks under a tree next to the entrance gate, and a monkey jumps down. As the hatch opens, the monkey jumps down into the trunk of the car, grabs the bananas, and runs off. And so no dessert, basically. but we still had a great time there. But that's the monkeys for you.
Chris, I know you haven't been to India, but you must have a monkey story from another country. Brazil,
Yeah.
surely.
Yeah. So my fiance, being Brazilian, has a plot of land in the countryside in Brazil. So she's got, with her dad, like a yoga retreat there, and an eco village, and on both sides you can hear monkeys, coming in at certain times of the week. They kind of come back and try to raid the fridges and try to raid the kitchens and then leave. But some of them are so tiny, the size of your hand, and they actually come and basically ask for food in a very very polite way. So I've got videos of, maybe I'll find them and share them, of me coming up and breaking a bit of banana off and holding it out to them, and they come over and they take it with two little hands, just take it from you in a very gratifying way, for both parties. So yeah, I've got good experiences with them, and consensual experiences of sharing food with them. So yeah, it's lovely. It does make me think when I see little monkeys running around the cities, like our impact as humans, in nature, in their habitat, in the monkeys' habitats. Now we're destroying their land essentially, and they're really integrating themselves into human society rather than the other way around, isn't it? So they're coming into the urban areas because we've destroyed what was their own, and they're adapting. So every time I hear stories like, oh, they stole food, I'm like, yeah, they stole food, so they should do. That we've been stealing our homes for years. So yeah.
I'll share a small one. So I was in Nepal a few years ago, and in the capital Kathmandu, and there's a very, very, probably one of the most famous Shiva temples called Pashupatinath there. And so we were visiting there, and it's just full of monkeys, like literally hundreds, if not thousands, of monkeys on the ground. And like one of the monkeys, obviously they're very cute, as you know, monkeys. Some people are scared of them, but I find them very cute. So one monkey, one pretty small child one, infant, was looking away, and I was walking past, and because they see humans, so often, they're not scared. They just carry on doing whatever they're doing. Anyway, so I was walking past, and I very casually, very silently, just stroked its back. And it got so angry. It turned around and showed me its teeth and started hissing. We were like, okay, we're not going to do that again. And then, as if to get us back, when we went back to our hotel, I believe the hotel sign said, "Leave all windows closed." We did not know why, but we did when we got back to the room. So when we got back to the room, there was about 3 huge monkeys in the room, and they were attacking our mini fridge, and the teas and coffees and the crisps and stuff. And so and interestingly, we would open our crisps from the top with our hands. Even though they've got hands, they use their teeth and just take it all out and make a big mess. And then anyway, so we got in the room, and they just weren't scared. So I was like, okay, what do we do? So I started throwing stuff at them, and they didn't care. They just took the rest of what they had wanted in their hands and left the room just casually.
Absolutely trashed. You should. What was the story in the autobiography? Was it Sri Yukteswar had a snake come up to him, and was it Yogananda was standing there? I can't remember exactly the story, but essentially the snake was imbued with peace and kind of mesmerized, and it kind of went off all happy. You need to learn that trick.
And then didn't he clap his hands, and then it just whimpered away, the snake?
Yeah, it just kind of went beneath his feet, I think, and slithered off. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah.
So communication is key.
So talking of Shiva temples, we talked about Pashupatinath, obviously that's one, and Kedarnath is another one. Badrinath is another one. So there's a very, very famous in Shiva temples across the Himalayan plains. And the thing about Shiva temples, the main sanctum is not Shiva or Nataraj, which is a dancing form of Shiva. It is usually a linga. So which is a lovely segue into the next scene, which is we see some ancient temples. One ancient temple. I think there's frescoes on the wall of Hanuman and other gods. But in the middle, in the sanctum, there's a priest conducting an arati ceremony with a linga in the middle. So to the linga, and it's got flowers adorning the linga, etc. So we know that there's Mike, have you been to Ranchi? There's a linga in. Okay, there is a linga in Ranchi in one of the hallways and rooms. Obviously, it's I don't know if it's worshipped to the extent a temple would, but has anyone been to a temple with a linga in it?
No. I really want to though.
Not knowingly.
No.
Knowingly, yeah.
I suppose. Yeah, they're not usually big. They're usually quite small. Recently went to Greece, and there's according to legend, there's a couple of very famous lingas there, and apparently they're still quite energetic. So let's talk about lingas, I suppose, before we quickly move on. So it's an ellipsoid form that comes almost out of the ground, and there's lots of legend about some lingas that are formed by themselves, like miraculously, that have come up through the ground, through the stone, and then when that happens, then obviously they say, well, in India that's believed that a temple, God has decided a temple to be there, and it becomes a very sacred space. But lingas generally are created and they're consecrated by swamis or yogis that are have the capability to consecrate them, and the idea is that you sit next to the linga, and you yourself are transformed, I suppose, while sitting in that space. And some lingas are associated with some chakras. So we have 7 chakras in the body and outside the body, and some lingas that are associated with all the chakras. And that's a little bit about lingas, I suppose. Anyone got anything they'd like to add about that?
For me, the only thing I know, really, I was introduced to lingas in depth through, again, Sadhguru. I think I've mentioned his name several times, but he created a linga. And
Dhyana linga, yes, I've been there.
Dhyana linga.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure, plenty about this, Priyank. So maybe you could tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so dhyan obviously means meditation or concentration. Dhyan, it's a word that's used in everyday language in North India. Dhyan rak, or pay attention. Like your teacher might tell you off for not paying attention because you're not having dhyan. So yeah, Dhyana linga is one of the is according to Sadhguru, he's consecrated it such that it is the representative of all the chakras, so all 7. So which is a very rare thing. And we sit there. It's a domed structure. Very little goes on in there other than meditation. So yeah, it's a fantastic place. I'd highly recommend you go there and meditate there. And any other temple that's famous because of its space, and in North India, as we say, Kedarnath and Pashupatinath in Nepal are extremely famous, and Badrinath as well.
Yeah, and on that note, not that it's taken a step away from the film itself, but it was fascinating to me hearing about the linga and the significance of it, and what it can be, essentially a real live guru, being in the presence of a fully fledged enlightened being of sorts. But supposedly for Sadhguru, it took him many lifetimes to be able to achieve building or making that. So many times he's tried, and the material or stone's cracked and it hasn't quite formed, and he said it took him many lifetimes to achieve that. So that's really cool. Really cool idea. I've never actually seen one in person. I would love to see one. I've never been around one, as far as I know. But there's natural formations. Just to your point, Priyank, do you mean actual lingas in their form, like a small stone object? Because I've heard of the devil's like the throat chakra in Portugal. I can't recall what it's the name of it. If you know what I'm talking about.
No, I've not heard of that. No.
It's a rock formation, and again, that's meant to be almost like the throat chakra of the earth. And I just wonder, is that something along the lines of what you mean by natural formations of?
No, you'll see them. So basically, you'll see a cave in India, and then they'll see locals will be gathering near the cave, and then you'll see that when you go inside, there'll be a little sanctum, makeshift sanctum, and there'll be just literally coming out of the ground an ellipsoid form or a linga, and it looks like, how the hell did that form? How did it get there? It definitely wasn't carved. It's a bit of it's a bit insane, really, to see it. I've seen quite a few actually across India and in Nepal actually.
And it's meant to be the primal object, the formless.
Yeah, so we know galaxies and other cosmonauts. We say ellipses and ellipsoids. That's the form that the universe takes naturally, and that's how it started. And obviously, orbits are all elliptical, aren't they? They're not circular. So anything that goes into space, we launch it, and immediately it goes into an elliptical orbit. So yeah, ellipse and ellipsoids are very fundamental to science and physics, and apparently spirituality as well.
Mm-hmm. When was the first time you guys heard about the linga form and this information?
Well, I'm obviously biased because my background is so it's my temple at home, for example, would have a small linga deity. So Mike, maybe you can answer that.
To be honest, I've heard about it, but I only really understood what it was today when I researched it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would love to learn this stuff at school. I think going back to a conversation we had before, it's like what's in this, like just as a small snapshot in this film, is a whole subject, and you could spend a lifetime, I'm sure, researching it and studying it many lifetimes, I'm sure. And it's just in one little small snapshot of this film, and easily you would go past it. Easily, you would not see it and not recognize what it is. So, yeah, pretty awesome to have it included. I wonder if the directors, the producers, knew exactly what they were including.
I definitely did.
Yeah.
Definitely did. I'd have to correct myself. Actually, what I just said, Badrinath is not one of a Shiva temple. It's Lord associated with Lord Vishnu, but Kedarnath and Pashupatinath is, and there's others obviously across the Himalayan plains that are. Let's go to the next thing. Mike, did you want to talk about the Samadhi Mandir at all? You had added a picture to our board.
Yes. Well, it's basically the address. Like in the next scene, we can like talk about the next scene, right?
Oh yeah, let me do that.
Yeah.
So the next scene, the narrator says, as the fragrance of flowers cannot be suppressed, so devotees from every part of India began to seek the divine nectar of this liberated master. You were talking about Lahiri Mahasaya.
Mm-hmm.
Day after day, the Guru initiated one or two devotees into Kriya Yoga, the science of meditation. So, Lahiri Mahasaya, his name was Shyam Charan Lahiri, and we say Mahasaya. Mahasaya means large-minded or magnanimous, or something grand. So we're calling him by his last name, Lahiri, or his surname, and Mahasaya, which is what I've just described. And yeah, so Mike, describe their door. So Brahmachari Shekhar and Brother Vishwananda, they come and they bow down to the door, and that's presumably the home of Lahiri Mahasaya, is it?
Yes, that's where he lived. It's like in Varanasi. I think like I looked on Google Maps, I looked for the address. It's funny that the I wonder if in India they have like different ways of numbering houses. It was like D31/58. I'm not exactly sure what this means. Madanpura, and then Bengali Tola. Is Tola like something? Is that like a district or a street, maybe something like that?
I don't know.
Yeah, in Varanasi. Yeah, you see, and then you see this picture of the door in the evening when they go there. I think they hold a lantern or something like that. And you see the address on the door, and then you see B. Lahiri, and that is pretty interesting, and like a place of pilgrimage for a lot of YSS and SRF devotees. And in that same, I'm not sure if it's the same building or the adjacent building, the Samadhi Mandir is definitely, it's like the same kind of location, definitely. I'm not sure if you use that same entrance to go through. And there's the Mandir of Lahiri Mahasaya, Mahasamadhi. It is pretty great how in the movie you see like a version of Lahiri Mahasaya sitting there cross-legged.
Oh, we're going to get there next.
We're going to get there next? Yeah. Okay, let me not spoil it then.
First, let's talk about Brahmachari Shekhar.
Okay.
Brahmachari Shekhar is now Brother Kamalananda as of 24th of September 2019. More trivia. So Brahmachari Shekhar and Brother Kamalananda, Brother Kamalanda now, who was Brahmachari Shekhar, and Brother Vishwananda came to London, didn't they, Mike? Were you there? You were there, I'm sure.
I was there. They came with Brother Chidananda, is that correct?
I think they've come twice. Well, have they? I can't remember. Anyway, yeah, they may have done. But yeah, so tell us.
Before he went to. So the one time I recall is right before right after Brother Chidananda became president of YSS SRF, he went to India and he did a stopover in London, which was great for us because I remember like the center was like completely packed of people. Like to get into the center, there was a huge line outside the door. Was amazing. And then yeah, they all came and gave satsang and service and everything, and were approachable. That was pretty great.
So I believe this was in 2016. I've actually got a article about this. This was at quite a monumentous occasion, and it involves the film Awake. So I'll read it out. It is refreshing to see that the world of politics, media, and religion can come together for the greater good. Under the auspices of Lord and Lady Pulpit, one of the most outstanding documentary features of recent times was screened at the House of Lords. Lord Pulpit expressed his admiration for screening the film in Parliament. It was an honour to host a private screening of Awake in the House of Lords. So for those who don't know, the House of Lords is one of the two chambers of Parliament. Chris, do you want to describe our Parliament quickly so people know the significance?
I am blissfully ignorant to the inner workings of Parliament.
The House of Lords is pretty epic. We went. You're allowed, because we're commoners. We're only allowed into the Member of Parliament. The House of Commons were commoners. So we can only peer through the door of the House of Lords. And House of Lords is a grand, beautiful chamber, whereas the House of Commons is obviously not as beautiful. But the House of Lords, like, it's got a seat that's fit for royalty in there, if you can imagine. So I don't imagine the film was screened there, but apparently I spoke to some devotees. They said we had permission for 5 screenings of the film Awake, and they didn't know where to do the last one. And Brahmachari Jason suggested the House of Lords, and Brother Vishwananda said that they were so pleased that they could screen it there. And apparently a lot of spiritual leaders and other dignitaries were there to watch it. So pretty special.
Yeah.
Pretty amazing. I mean, I'm not on board with the whole class system in the UK, but yeah, it's a great honor, I guess, and it's very nice that they were so open to screen it. It's also pretty great. What was his name? Lord
Pulpit.
Lord Pulpit. He's Gujarat, of the Gujarati descent, isn't he?
correct. Yeah.
Which is also a sign of how open the British society is.
Yep,
Yeah.
yep. Yes, he lives quite near me here actually. So Yogananda's birth. Let's talk about that. So now we see the narration goes to day after day the Guru initiated 1 or 2 devotees into Kriya Yoga, the science of meditation. Early in their married life, my parents became disciples. Lahiri Mahasaya predicted my birth, and that through this body, many shall receive the spiritual enlightenment of India. So as this narration is happening, Chris, we see a very beautiful scene of a little room, and there's devotees sitting at the feet of Lahiri Mahasaya, who's on a sort of a slightly raised platform, sitting in a half lotus. So tell us about what are your impressions of that scene. So obviously this is a complete reenactment. We don't have any footage of Lahiri Mahasaya over 100 years ago. Tell us what your feeling is of seeing that reenactment.
Yeah, my feeling was that it was a very humble reenactment and probably quite apt as to the times and the kind of real life occurrences, that there was very few people there. And yeah, you could see Yogananda being carried in as a baby by his mother. And it's just a very touching scene that you've got a mixture of men and women sitting there in what would have been quite a long time ago, right? Was it 1893? Is that the date?
Correct, yeah.
So it just seems like a very cozy, small, dedicated group of people, and it just struck a really nice chord with me when I saw it. So and the Lahiri Mahasaya actor. He did a good job at kind of tricking the eye initially to think, oh, is that Lahiri Mahasaya?
What was his name? You found out his name, didn't you?
We found his name, yeah. But it's actually just in the titles, in the credits at the end. So Tanmoy Kormokar is the name, and I googled the name and could not find him anywhere. So
oh man, I was going to nominate him for an Oscar. I mean, what a
for that role, yeah.
Chris, Mike, what do you think of that type of portrayal of a quite important scene in the autobiography of a yogi, and perhaps the narrative that we have of Yogananda and his life?
Yeah, I love that they actually found this scene so important that they reenacted it, because I feel like in Yogananda's life they didn't reenact a whole lot of scenes, right? But this one, they felt you have to feel like you are there in that moment. And it's like Chris said, like the actor looks exactly like Lahiri Mahasaya. I mean, it's a bit from the side, a bit far away and stuff, but it could be how it actually was. Probably pretty close reenactment, I think.
Let's hear from Paula De Florio and Lisa Freeman, who speaks second, about this. So this is the presenter. They did an interview of scenes like this. So I think it's interesting to hear their take on it. So the presenter will ask a question and Paula De Florio will respond.
His life. I'm wondering how you dealt with sort of the challenge of representing very non-physical themes on the camera.
It's tough. Yeah, I would say that, it was a challenge. It took a while to come up with the cinematic language. I mean, first and foremost, so much of yoga, even the use of recreations in a film, is something that some people feel is taboo. And it was hard to imagine that we could actually capture with recreations parts or aspects of Yogananda's life that dealt with that yearning, with that otherworldliness. And I think that initially we thought of using visual effects to try to create some of these other states, higher states of consciousness, and it really didn't work. I mean, it just got worse and worse. The more we tried, the worse it was. And we started, out of necessity, we just started filming things like reflections on water or mirrors. We would do time lapses. We just started to use our intuition, follow our intuition, to create aspects of that consciousness that we wanted to portray and layer it and play around with it in editing. And it created for us something magical in ways that we didn't expect. And then we just said, well, let's forget about digital effects for now. This is sort of the language that we want to use.
I mean, we wanted the film to be experiential. We wanted to take people on a journey. I mean, on his life journey, but also on their own personal journey, right? And so film is a really visceral medium. So it wasn't so much about being literal, which is where we started to try and represent those cosmic consciousness experiences, right? But it was sort of to create a mood and to kind of create uplift so that by the end of the film, hopefully you're walking out feeling, yes, there is possibility here. I can tap into infinite possibility.
And also I think that everyday life is poetic. And we wanted to capture that. We wanted to find the poetic moments in everyday life. And that's part of the awakening that happens also as a meditation.
Right. Wow. It's really good insight. So that was Lisa Freeman in the middle there. So the two the directors. What did you make of that a description of what they tried to go for, Chris?
Go for it.
Yeah, I thought it was quite a good insight as to the producing at a technical level, something is spiritually meaningful. And what I really like is what she's just said there at the end about the poetry. And it was quite a poetic scene, and that does strike that poetic chord with me, that it's very touching, very meaningful scene. And I love how they didn't go with some cinematics and they just shot it as close to what it probably was. And actually, it does jog in memory here listening to her talk, which was when I first read the book. Every time you read a book, you visualize, you see images in your mind's eye. And when I saw this in Awake, this scene, it was very similar to what I saw in my mind's eye. A very small building of sorts, like a small room, and a very intimate moment of coming up, with the child, with Yogananda. So it really did a bang on job for me. I thought they really did. They probably honed into Master's intention well. So,
Mike?
Yeah, I agree actually, because I feel like this moment where they go with baby Yogananda to Lahiri Mahasaya, this is not the moment to take out the big guns and like show some kind of computer graphic or whatever. So in general, I feel like this is maybe Awake is not the right film to do this, to do those renderings. But I mean, we as devotees, we often do visualizations ourselves, right? Where we visualize light, where we visualize energy and stuff. And to actually see this on a screen, I wouldn't mind that actually. I would actually like that. Maybe not in Awake, because Awake is it's a movie for people where you actually see the life of this amazing person, and it maybe doesn't have the right atmosphere for it. And I see why they went to do it the way they did. But maybe in the future, I'm sure many more movies will be made about Yogananda in the future. Maybe some of them will feature that.
Mm-hmm.
Nice. So we see that we see the baby of the little baby boy that was supposed to be Mukunda Lal Ghosh as our guru, Paramahansa Yogananda. Some little bit of trivia. So he was born on 8:38 p.m. in the same city, Gorakhpur. His name, I don't know if you guys know, but when babies are born, the time of birth is extremely important for astrological reasons. Mm-hmm. And then we assign the first consonant or the letter that we should name the baby after. So in Yogananda's case, it was Mu, hence they did Mukunda. And Mukunda means giver of freedom. And that's obviously an apt name. But in terms of some information about naming, so usually names in India we tend to, the culture uses any and all means possible to support one's liberation. And if you're calling your son, Ram is obviously one of the gods, and if you're calling him Ram, then as you're saying Ram, Om is almost in that name. So if you imagine Ram, Om, it's there. So you're kind of already saying a mantra, and you, even in a naming convention, all Indian names, traditional Indian names, have a spiritual aspect to it. Like my name, Priyank, means beloved. Priya is the Sanskrit root, and I think Sri Yukteswar's name was Priyanath. So similarly, obviously I'm not comparing myself to Sri Yukteswar, but yes, so that's a little bit. I don't believe that's there in Western naming conventions, is it? Or have you heard anything of that ilk?
Well, my name is Christopher, isn't it? So, the history of that is Krishna, Christ, Christos.
Yes.
It's all sorts. So, yeah, I mean, it's going to be in there, but it's definitely. I don't think my parents thought about that when they named me. Definitely not.
Yeah, like Michael is a Hebrew name. I think it's like
Michael.
pronounced Michael. Yeah, and it's like I think it's El is God. I think it's he who is like God or something similar, which is also an apt name. No, no, but I do feel like, especially more traditionally in especially the Catholic parts of Europe, there were all those Catholic saints, and usually the first names were usually, I mean, there was this whole logic of the name of your granddad or grandma or whatever, but also they were usually names of Catholic saints, and they had a meaning of their own.
Cool. So apparently he looked, well, he does. We know he looks a lot like his mum. We see a picture of his mum and dad, and apparently in culture, in if you look like your mum, then you're blessed, or it's going to be a fortuitous life. So it's a blessing to look like your mum, and certainly it was in this case. His name is Mejda as well. So the second son is called Mejda, and his brother Sananda Ghosh wrote a biography about his early life called Mejda. Have you read that, Mike?
Yes.
How's
Actually,
that?
my dad read it to me when I was a kid. Yeah, it's very nice. I had very, very cute stories, mostly about Mukunda's childhood and how it was perceived by the brother. So very interesting book.
Very nice. The other important facts of trivia that happened that year, 1893, Sri Aurobindo, who's a saint who settled in South India, returned from the UK after his education in 1893. Gandhi accepted, Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi accepted his position in South Africa as a lawyer on that year. And Vivekananda gave the talk on the World Parliament of Religions in Chicago in that year. So it was a very important year. Chris.
Pretty good.
Yeah. And when I think about 1893, Yogananda's birth, the 5th of January, and that scene, I just think about reincarnation and spirit, the spirit taking form in the in the human in the form of a human baby, and Yogananda talks about some memories that he's had as a child, and as we talked about in minute 1, the memories, recollections that he had, or the awareness that he had when he was in the womb. And it does make me think of the significance just of the spirit descending into matter and descending into form, and the significance of that moment where the Lahiri Mahasaya had a real significant part to play in the path, let's say, of bringing Kriya Yoga to the West through Yogananda, and just the mission. It's kind of like a little team coming together, isn't it? Like you've got this cool team in Yogananda's mother, with Babaji and Lahiri Mahasaya, and the predictions, let's say, that kind of came with that, with Yogananda. And it's just just to go back to this moment in the film, is such a beautiful moment of the beginning, certainly for our guru's life in the form of a human. And I just wonder, actually, they never talked about it as far as I'm aware, if he remembers anything from his really young childhood, or when he was a baby or something. But I can imagine him just sitting there fully conscious, like, oh, hello, like not able to talk. like being able to see and understand what's going on even as a young baby. But yeah, beautiful year, beautiful way to commemorate that moment.
Right. That's pretty much it for the minute. Does anyone have any more before? Let's discuss feedback. We're privileged to have some feedback.
Yeah.
Anyone for any more for the minute?
No, not for me. I did just miss like a little Mark Twain quote on Benares actually that I didn't say.
What was it?
I had it written down somewhere actually. I thought it was kind of cool. It was Benares is older than history, older than tradition, older even than legend, and looks twice as old as all of them put together. So I thought that was a really cool,
Wow.
quote.
That's pretty awesome, isn't it?
Did he actually go, or how did he come this quote to be? How did this quote come to be?
So I think he traveled. He traveled there back in the day. I'm just actually searching it up. I don't think I'm quick enough to get up. But he went there and he thought it was amazing, and he wrote that amazing.
Great.
Yeah. But
let's talk about the feedback. So first of all, we've had some excellent feedback now that we've launched on all of our platforms. Firstly, we've heard that some of the quotes are available in the book The Life of Yogananda by Philip Goldberg, which I've now started reading. It's a very good read. It's a biography of Yogananda by someone who's not a member of SRF. So that's very good. We've had some other feedback. Chris, do you want to quickly talk about the feedback?
Yeah, I probably could have segued actually into this in my last comments there about minute one and Yogananda's consciousness and his spiritual analysis on our part of that. Some of the feedback came back very, very spot on about how we could maybe go into more deeper explorations of the first minute and in general look into the more spiritual aspects of the golden thread of the movie. So yeah, warranted. I think it's a very fair comment, and we were discussing just before this recording how we would actually incorporate that into the minutes moving forward. So whether we maybe gather more feedback and reflect on all of them at once, or what we'll do. We're open to suggestions, so feel free to fire them in. And I think what would be good as well is maybe open to discussion for everybody here. Is if you see that we're going to be covering the minutes as we are, and you want to take minute 15 or 20 or something that really stands out to you, if you've got a really beautiful insight and you want to share it with us, please do, because we're really keen to hear everybody's insights and intuitions and thoughts. So please share.
Yep, and if there's sufficient demand, I suppose we're more than happy to do a quick recap of something and discuss it in a bit more detail based on some feedback that you give us. So Mike, I think you had some other feedback as well. You want to just go through that quickly?
Yeah, I mean, like Chris said, there was overwhelmingly positive feedback. One was about focusing on highlights in the movie and giving our minutes a narrative based on what is the highlight and focusing on that. And I do see the allure of that. I feel like maybe that would maybe lead to us talking more about one thing and less about something else. But I do like the idea, and we will try to incorporate that in the future. If you have any similar ideas, or if you agree or disagree, then you can always let us know in the YouTube comments or in the Facebook comments. We would be happy to hear from you.
Excellent. So thank you very much. In the next minute, we shall be discussing Yogananda and his acceptance as his role, expands to the West, and his responsibility as a guru of this ancient tradition. So we'll be analyzing that in great detail. Does anyone have any more? Mike?
No.
Not from me.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, everyone. I'll see you next time. Jai Guru.
Bye.
Bye.